We might as well just start with a breath. Everybody close your eyes if you're with us right now. Straighten out your spine. And we're just going to take a circular breath. We're going to imagine the breath when we inhale come from the feet out to the right side of our body, around up to the top of our head. That's the right side of the circle. When we exhale, we want to exhale across the left side of the body back to the feet. In three, two, big breath off to the right side. Exhale to the left side. Two more. Even fuller. Inhale to the right. Make that half of your circle. Feel the energy climbing around you. Exhale to the left side. Complete your circle. And last one. Okay. Better?
Y'all, I just had to set this podcast up. It's hot. Okay.
From the Houstonian.
It's hot. And on top of that, just trying to make sure that it sounds good, sounds right. So this is a first of all, welcome back to another episode of Remembering Me, a soul healing podcast. I am Candace Love.
I'm your boy, Brick City Buddha, also known as Docs.
I was ready to give it to y'all, but let me give y'all a proper introduction
Right.
first. So this is the first of us attempting to do our podcast series outdoors. We enjoy being outside in nature. It ain't always fun being hot, but we are also trying to figure out the sound. So just know, bear with us as time goes on. We're going to perfect opportunities to learn more about how to get the sound corrected for outside. I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm. And it may be
So
perfect right now.
yeah,
We'll
it
see when
could.
we get back.
Yeah, that's the thing. You never really know until
Right.
it's like post production. So there's a lot that goes into the process. And we do have top of the line equipment. So I just got to learn how to use it. So just stick with us. But I think we should be good.
Yeah.
So if you hear kids and cars or
It's
random
part of
things like
life.
that, yeah,
It's part of
just
life.
take what you need and leave what you don't.
Right. And part of why I think we've been led to do this is because the people that watch this podcast, I know you guys are busy, you guys got families. Sometimes the only little bit of stillness you may get throughout the course of a week is being able to sit with us for an hour or so. So to add the aesthetic, the energy of nature, and to maybe subconsciously inspire you to come ground out, pardon a little stick, to come ground out, put your feet on the grass, and just take a moment whenever you can, at least once a week, if not once a day, to come center yourself. Nature is a battery. Nature is a therapy in and of itself. The negative ions, y'all can look up why that's important. And the atmosphere when you are outdoors, it literally is free healing. It's literally free therapy. So we also want to inspire you guys to start doing some of that for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's been what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Ooh.
Yeah, daddy went away. Daddy went
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
I had to go see my son and my family, my parents who live in Virginia. We planned on shooting multiple episodes to not have a gap, but we go at the speed of intuition. So that didn't happen. We was able to get our last episode off. Shout out to just Mike the Poet. Everybody that's continuing to watch that clip. A lot of those clips went viral. We appreciate y'all, but we have had a little bit of a break, and that's I guess a perfect segue into our first topic because as quote unquote business people, you kind of map out how you expect things to flow, how you want them to flow. But if you don't have that bendability, if you don't have that malleability, a lot of times your intuition, your spirit, source is trying to tell you to go a completely different direction. And we be real strong headed. Once we got it written down on paper, once we got our blueprint for how we want to move forward, we kind of stick to that. We're bound to that. We become slaves to that. And a lot of times you can't see the scope of how many other things need to be calculated that you can't see in your pinpointed vision of what's going to happen next. So even us just being able to take a 3 week break has allowed the podcast to continue to grow, even as we haven't been putting out content, and it's also given us space to realize a lot of things as always about ourselves, myself as a unit, and just life.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should also just tell them like how was your 2 week trip away with family and have an opportunity to see Marty. I know one of the things is we speak candidly and transparently about our personal lives.
Mhm.
And also, I know people want to know about, those aspects of our lives and the things that they don't really get to see. So how was your trip?
It was eventful. I had an episode when I was on my way back because I had spent so much energy. I was on a train back to Jersey with my son, and I almost fainted. I almost passed out. And I'm dealing with some health opportunities right now. I don't say problems. I say health opportunities, but I'm recalibrating how I approach my body. So I just got to be on square with how I eat, even more so than I used to be before, making sure I get enough energy in my system. That particular day on the way back, it wasn't just food though. I had an episode where my mother, her health conditions worsened. I'm not going to get into what happened, but she had an episode where she actually also passed out. She fainted. She had to get rushed to the hospital, and a lot of work had to get done. So I haven't seen my son in the flesh in what, 2 months, maybe 2.5 months. So every time I with him, I try to go full throttle at making sure his experience with dad is eventful, is beautiful. Every day I'm planning stuff. I'm calculating how our trip gonna go. So I'm giving energy to Marty. I'm still conducting business, still having sessions, still planning things out on my end of things. And then the energy from hearing what my mother is dealing with and what she's going through, it took a lot out of me. So I was on that train. Marty was asleep. I had to go use the bathroom, and we somewhere stopped in Boston. And I'm on my way back to my seat, and literally the room started doing this like extremely fast. I got back to my seat, and I tried to hold it in, but I ended up, vomiting right then and there while my son was asleep. And a lot of times we think what's going on with our body is strictly physical, but especially when you become more sensitive to prana, to subtle energy, chi, ki, reiki, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people say they're empaths or empaths. You download a lot of energy you may not have been privy to previous to you leveling up. So I feel everything. And all that energy I had to download with the output on top of that, it literally took me out. So when I got back, you had to coach me back into a level of peace and stillness and being able to allow those waves to flow through me. It's always beautiful seeing my son, but life always got a curveball. And what happened with my mom was a curveball. And it brought up a lot of work I had already been dealing with or working on as far as previous versions of myself. And to now be a grown man, it was a long time when my mom had to pray for me daily to get a job. I was going on job interviews every single day for 2 years. I could not get a job. And this is when I was transitioning out of the streets and trying to, do the right thing before I got to spirituality. And it hurt her to see me go through what I went through. It was a certain time I went for an interview and I had locks at the time, all the way down my back. He's like, "You're a good guy, but I think you're gonna have to cut your hair if you want a job." So it was just a lot of shedding I had to do at that time. So for her to see me come full circle and now her to be at a point in her life where she needs me to pour in, and even her being in a space where she has difficulty receiving love, I hugged her as much as I could even before we found out about that. But just seeing the programs that it's now my responsibility to break, the cycles it's my responsibility to break, and then to hand that freedom down to my son, all that kind of came to a head in this trip. So it was a lot going on.
Yeah, and I recognize too after our podcast episode where I was sharing about like the popcorn and
Right.
how it was affecting me and how anything at this point that I eat for the most part kind of just like affects my skin. I recognize that there's a lot of health related topics that are happening with a lot of people. Even a few days, maybe 2 days before my mom had food poisoning really, really bad. And so it's just like a lot of things happening that's really ushering and inviting people to really focus on our health in such a maybe alarming way, but definitely an intentional way. How was your time with Marty?
It was beautiful. Marty is a rider. He a soldier. That first day when we didn't have a vehicle, he just kept saying how bored he was. And I hear you talk a lot. Sometimes you feel bad. You don't get Cleo to the park. So triple that, quadruple that. When you actually got a human being that needs to be active. And me not having a lot of time with my son at this point, I want to double down on that. So that first day was rough, just seeing him struggle through the boredom. I was still trying to figure out things that we could do. But once we figured out how to get around, the time was beautiful, and to just see the space he's in as a young being. I don't see children how most people see him. I see him as little gurus, little gods, and little packages. But he's at a point where a lot of the lessons that I've given him, his mom, you, his whole family, everywhere he go, he got love all across the country. So I'm starting to see all those lessons coalesce, and him being able to read, put words together, have actual like grown man conversations with me about life as we going through the forest, going through the trail. Him working out without me having to tell him meditating without me having to say anything is just beautiful to know, even while I'm apart. And for the men that's doing your best to still be in your child's life, even if not in the flesh, the messages are cutting through. It may not, you may not be there when those seeds sprout, because I'm sure these seeds that I was just witnessing have been sprouting before I got to them in this particular vacation, if you will. But to see all those things coalesce in times where didn't know if what I was doing was still going to maintain in his consciousness, and it absolutely is continuing to grow. So it's just beautiful to watch my son become a little man.
Good. I just
Yeah,
wanted to allow you to expound on that. People, want to know why we didn't have our
right,
podcast for the past 3 weeks.
right,
And so it's beautiful that you get to share that aspect of your journey and what
right.
you experienced.
How was your time? You
My
you you,
time,
you did a lot.
I I did. Did I? I don't even remember.
I,
What did
I
I
I mean,
do?
the a lot is sitting right over there next to you, ain't
Yeah.
it? You forgot already?
I finally got my book, y'all.
Hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep talking.
I finally got the book. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So initially the expected date was March 31st, but based on my publisher, it was certain things that were delayed. So I just got my copy uh what was that? Last week.
Yeah.
And so everyone else should receive their copy this upcoming week. So if you haven't already purchased my book, please go ahead and do that. You can do that on my website, candicelove.com. And that's what we did the whole time. That's what I did. Me and Cleo and my two cats talking back and forth to publishers, talking back and forth with formatters and cover experts and all of these different things, just trying to get this book out. And I finally have my first copy.
And but like that's the end part of it. We got to go to the beginning.
What's the beginning?
The beginning. It's a few different phases to it, but
Yeah.
as far as you being a entrepreneur, 100% working for yourself, talk to the people about even just the decision to leave a secure job, secure
Yeah.
paycheck, and something that you for a long time did enjoy, but it got to the point it started to feel like a squeeze, like you were growing outside of that. So
Right.
people don't realize that, military, police officer, and then a teacher. How long was you a teacher?
Oh, how
Like
long
four
was that?
years, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So talk to the people about how it was to detach from something that was that stable.
Right. Yeah. So my background, like he said, is military. So I did 10 years in the military, 7 years as a police officer. Those of you who struggle with the math, okay, YouTubers, God dog it, you can have two careers at the same time,
Right,
especially if you're in the military and you are in other military forms of policing. So that and then transitioning from policing to teaching criminal justice to
right,
middle school and high school students.
hmm,
That was the basis of my foundation is
right,
all things safety and security, right? So
right,
that means safe job, people gonna be going to jail forever,
right.
so you always have, some sort of income coming in with a job that is as secure as that.
Yeah,
And
you had a
once,
certain savings as
yeah,
well.
I
Yeah.
did. I had a very large savings that I was um working towards and building for a long time. And as I started to heal, grow, and evolve, I recognized that my job in safety and security was a reflection of the fact that I did not feel safe as
Mm,
a person, as a human, as a soul. I just did not feel safe in my body. I didn't feel safe in my environment. And because I felt so deeply unsafe within my being, the only way that my body could manifest safety was to manifest a
Exactly.
job in the military, a job as a police officer,
Mm.
so I could walk around with M16s,
Right.
M4s, Glocks, and things like that on my person at
Talk
all
that talk,
times.
Slim.
I know that's right. And so that's how, when you are experiencing trauma that is subtle, it will manifest as a job, and you'll think that it's just the job that you
Right.
have.
Pay attention to your careers.
Absolutely. Please pay attention to your careers. And so as I started to evolve, I recognized I don't even like this job. I've never liked this job, but it was financial
Yeah.
security, and I recognized I didn't feel safe. And being able to hide behind that badge made me feel safe. When I met you is when I started recognizing it was time to transition out of working, and it was time to transition into entrepreneurship.
What was it about us meeting that influenced that?
The safety.
Mm.
You you cultivated an environment for me to feel safe in my decisions.
Mm.
You cultivated an environment that reminded me I'm taken care of. And also the guidance that you gave me as far as the savings, not
Mm.
even relying on the savings,
Right.
because eventually, we ended up using part of that for the
For the
house and
house.
stuff.
Yeah.
So you just really gave me guidance, like, if you're going to do it, then do it because you know you're capable of doing it, not because you have a specific nest egg that's going to make you feel
Exactly.
safe. Because if that nest egg is no longer there, then the safety is going to be ripped out from
Right.
under you. So I had to really work with what it was like to be an entrepreneur. And I think right now I'm, what, 3 years in?
Mm-hmm.
2022
Two. Two.
years
Mm-hmm.
in. So 2 years in, and since then I've been creating and putting out things. Sasha Flowers, my skincare line, will be out really soon. Right now it's at
Run
the
it up.
manufacturers,
Run it up.
okay? New rebranding, all of the things, which is so exciting. So my skincare line is coming back out as well, which is something that I launched. And then my one-on-one sessions with clients, even being able to do something like teaching people about the wisdom I have, teaching people about the knowledge that I have, was a part of my entrepreneurship. It's nowhere near as much money as I was making then,
Right.
but the time that I have to heal, grow, and evolve, the time that I have to just wake
Yep.
up and be grateful, the time that I have to just come out and record a podcast with my husband,
Mm-hmm.
make love to my husband randomly at 10 in the morning. I'm telling your business now.
Right. They thought we were celibate.
Okay, we're gonna get into that too. God dog it. So the time that I have to just be with myself
Right.
is a byproduct of this entrepreneurship, and how I was really able to really like double down on all of my wisdom and my knowledge and my intelligence, to where I was able to put it into a book,
Mm.
that I was able to share it with other people to where it helps them in their process.
Mm.
So I don't remember what the question
No,
was,
no, you
but
good because there's a few things I want to expound on in what you said. At a certain point when you started to realize that you didn't want to be at that job no more, even though it still had its beauty, you loved the kids that you work with and things of that nature. But I remember it started to become like a real struggle for you to get up. You started to become late a little bit, and it just took a lot for you to actually even get to the job. So I remember when we started to talk about it, and you brought it to me, you brought it to your mom. Two completely different philosophies on what it is that we told you we felt was best. And I never told you what to do. All I said is, from my experience, I ain't really have no nest egg. Like, I jumped off the porch and it got to a point where the job I was working, it was for the most part paying the bills with me freelancing and counseling. I was doing that for a long time, teaching meditation for a long time before I left. But I didn't have like 50,000 in my account. I just knew making less money being at this job than I would be able to if I was doing this full time. And with that type of decision, you're thinking about, well, at least I know I'm gonna get these 10 hours every day. I'm gonna get these 45, 50 hours a week. Once you make that leap, it's like, you know what? It may be days where nobody signs up for a course. Nobody signs
Facts.
up for a session. What you gonna do in those times? But a large part of intuitive entrepreneurialism is being able to exist in that space where you calculate what's in front of you and you do your best not to hypothesize how something is gonna go right or wrong. If you are feeling like you in that groove of intuition and you're doing what your spirit telling you to do, that's it. As soon as you start to hypothesize about, well, what if nobody books from Monday to Thursday? How am I pay this bill? Then you start to perpetuate. You start to create that algorithm in the universe, and that's what's going to come back to you. So I had already had experience jumping off the porch with not much of a nest egg, and it worked. It's still to this day working. It still ebbs and flows. It ain't always popping. Sometimes it's super popping. Sometimes I'm making more money now than I did when I was hustling in way less of the time. But you still got to be secure with those ebbs and flows. So when you first told me that this is something that was on your mind, pretty much all I told you, I gave you my side of it and how would that work for me. And I told you to follow your heart. Your mom was like, you better not leave that job.
Facts.
Now you better make sure you got a certain amount if you're gonna leave in your nest egg. I think your goal was like 100K or something like that,
Right.
right? So it was two completely different philosophies, and both of them had your best interests at hand. But before you even took the leap off the porch, you first was at that fork in the road of I got we wasn't married yet, but I got a soulmate who I know is on my side and wants the best for me. I got a mother. Same thing in a different way, telling me two completely different things. And my soul and my intuition is in the middle. You still had to figure out, even in that moment, from two angles of people that love you, what's best for me right now. And you had done the responsible, the stable thing your whole life. This was your first time to be like, you know what? I got to step out on all the information I've gathered, all the trips I've taken, all the money you spent traveling all over this world, meeting people. It's time to put that into use. So a lot of y'all may be at that point where the dojo of life, you got your black belt already, but you playing a role of a white belt, still behind that cubicle, still behind that desk because you feel like it's safe. And low key, in the world we live in, the safety not even in the cubicle no more. Companies is folding left and right. I'm not saying to just leave your job right now, but the deepest level of safety as far as finances is following your intuition, right? That's what's always going to take you to the abundance. It may not be a direct path, it may not be a direct paycheck, but it's always going to take you through the twists and turns that life needs to unfold to constantly keep you in what you need when you need it. So just you taking that first step was extremely big to just watch you be able to do. And me being able to be a man who couldn't say, here's $50,000. My value came in, well, this is what's happened in my journey. I believe in you. I know you could do this. And if you feel ready, I'm with you. And you took the leap.
Yeah, and it was necessary because one of the things that I recognized was with my mom. I'm an only child, and me and my mom are very close. I want to read this, babe. Can you
Okay.
hold this
Yeah, I
page
got you.
open? Me and my mom are very close, so her opinion does matter to me. And for a very long time, even though we are like super close and best friends, we typically agree on the same
Right.
things. It's very rare where she's like no and I'm like yes, or I'm like yes and she's like no.
Right.
So this was like, but you weren't raised in a generation that would do something like this.
Right.
So I recognize that there is a barrier that won't allow you to see what I feel because they've to a large degree been programmed to
Absolutely.
enjoy working. I
Absolutely.
ain't never wanted to work a day in my life. I've always been very open about the fact that I've never wanted to work. And so I had to also recognize that this isn't an area where I can rely on if my mom approves, then I'm with it. I had to rely on what my soul said. And the advice that you were able to give me was enough to remind me the only advice that matters is the advice that comes from my soul, what
Mm,
I'm being guided to do.
mm,
So I didn't wait until I hit 100K in the bank account. Um, I still had enough to where it did make me feel good enough to make the decision,
right.
and that was the best decision that I ever made in my
Mm,
life because now I get to live the life that I've been praying for.
right.
And when I hated going to work, I think I told y'all about this before. When I hated going to work, I still had to find gratitude.
Absolutely.
So I would write every morning in my journal and pray for a life that healing was my life. That being able to cry when I needed to cry without having to pause because I had to be to work at a certain time, making my job healing is what my request was
Right.
for a very long time. And I just had to have enough faith and courage to answer that call and step into that field, that door. And I did that. And now I get to really live the life that I desire and do the things that I want to do. And money is not at the forefront of
Mm.
that. As long as we are good enough to where we can eat what we want to eat, we can live a life that feels good. We live in a home that feels like God,
Right.
and that is enough. It may not always hit the same standard as when I was in a very stable career,
Right.
but it hits the standard that this is what the soul needs.
And at times it surpasses it.
Absolutely.
And this is the thing too. You start to realize that that idea, that algorithm in our mind, I need to be putting out energy to receive energy back. And it takes time to be able to put the energy out. So this is why even that infrastructure of a 40-hour work week, or for a lot of people at this point, way beyond that, yeah, you getting that paycheck, but that's cutting in half, and even more so in a lot of cases, your time to be still to receive the downloads. So in a lot of ways, we realize at this point that time is more valuable than those pieces of paper, because the
Absolutely.
time we are able to be still, the December when nothing was going on, no clients booking, we still
Right.
spending money, it's Christmas, all this stuff, and we had no impulse to move or do anything. That turns into these seasons where you understand the book needs to come. I start working on my joint. We still
Yeah.
coming up with different things to put out into the world. But now we have that time, being that we've left the quote unquote security of the 9 to 5. Now we have inordinate amounts of time to receive the messages from our spirit, which eventually turn into abundance. And you got to be comfortable with the month, the week, the months sometimes where there are no downloads, and understand it's still going to come exactly when I need it. And once you are comfortable in that space, the main thing that keeps people from getting to it is the fear that starts to arise in those downtimes, because you're scared. All right, here we go. We about to not be able to make it. We about to not be able to pay the bills. But the more you work in this frequency, your trust muscle, and how God is guiding you starts to develop. You still feel the squeeze. You still feel like, I don't know how we gonna get to Friday. I don't know how we gonna get to next month. I just know it's gonna happen because I've allowed it to happen so many times. I didn't let the frequency of fear block the energy that was developing from a seed state on a whole other side of the world and a person I don't even know yet. Me not being afraid, it didn't block that seed developing into the interest of that person in California, going online, seeing Doc's page, seeing Candace's page. Like, you know what? I think I could collaborate with them, and them sending us a message. Just an example, but them sending us a message in the season when we may be in a downtime. Like, you know what? I want to do this, that with the third with y'all, and 3, 4, 5 thousand dollars comes just like that. In those moments 2 weeks prior where it's like, I don't know what's going on, but I trust, F it, I know we're gonna be taken care of. There are all these angles of abundance that are trying to make their way to you. But one, you're not valuing the money of time enough. And two, if you start to do that, you're kind of pouring sand on the fire of abundance that's building in ways you can't even see.
Yeah, and it's like the fear. I know a lot of people are like, no, I can't do that. I gotta
Right,
have at least this much in the
right,
account. And I feel you because I felt that way as well. But even when that is no longer there, you have to rely on something.
right.
And so who are you when you don't have control? When
Mm,
you don't have access to control, when there's nothing you can do about it? Are you gonna still attempt to force control into submission?
mm,
And if you do that, what is the reason why most people utilize control? Is because they don't feel safe,
right,
because they don't feel provided for, because they're afraid. And so we have to not just rely and rest on control, but really get down to the root of, why don't I feel safe? What am I afraid of? Underneath not being able to pay the bills, what is really happening that you are so fearful? Typically, people are just fearful about life in general. And then the only thing that they can attach to is, well, I'm fearful about the bills, because they can't really, on the underlying reason, figure out what else they're afraid of.
Right.
They're afraid of not being loved. They're afraid of not being wanted. They're afraid of not being taken care of. There's so many unaligned aspects of what we just hold fear in our body. But the easiest thing for the brain to latch on to is fear of money,
Mm.
right? That's
Which we
what's
did a podcast on already. Yeah.
exactly the fear of money, and that's what society gives us. And so I love the song by Glorilla. I don't really like the song, but I
Like
love
that part.
the part. And she say, I could give a F about a credit score. I might be rich as F tomorrow. And I
Mm.
was like, you're right. Because low key, my business did so well the first year. I made over six figures, but I didn't know anything about taxes.
Right.
So I owe the IRS in taxes. And so now I'm like, dang, that's a large number that I owe in taxes. And that's just for 2020.
Right. Same thing happened to me when I hopped off the porch.
And then you got 2021 and 22.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I can't allow myself to become extremely stressed about paying these taxes back, or I might be rich as F tomorrow.
Facts.
And I rather just rely on I might be rich as F tomorrow. They'll get
Facts.
this $100 a month
Right.
until I might be rich. That's the trust.
Right.
That's the faith. That's the
Right.
relying on this system ain't gonna punk me.
Right.
This system is not going to punk me out of trusting what my soul has
Absolutely.
planned for me. And if I made the decision to step into entrepreneurship, listening to my soul,
Was
listening,
guided. You didn't even make the choice.
yeah,
It's guided.
right.
Yeah.
Just and easily guided. It was
Right.
such an easy transition. And so if I made that decision to really allow myself to be guided and to follow and answer that call, nothing else has permission to fear me into going to get a job,
Right.
fear me into forcing things into submission, fear me and trying to make more money. The things that I create now, I created this book because I wanted to.
Right.
I've been writing about these things since I was 16 years old. I
Right.
just finally put it in the format of putting it in a book, but I've been having my book written.
Right.
So I wrote this because I wanted to. If I have an offering on my page, like my skincare line, I was only prepared to sell 50 items. I didn't know it was going to blow up. I make my skincare because I want to.
Right.
It's not about the monetary gain. It's the gratitude that now I have the ability to just create and watch something manifest into physical form. But nothing has permission to fear me into making money or fear me into submission and trying to control expectations to outcomes.
Yeah, like you always say, what is the saying? If you're not growing, you're dying or you're dead. What is it?
Anything not growing is dead.
Anything not growing is dead. And a huge part of growth is finding your way through the prism of intuition to what makes you feel alive, to what makes you feel purposeful. And a lot of times, initially, that don't look like something that's going to have you up six figures in a few months. It's just like, I feel like doing this right now.
Right.
You are led to put it out, and then what it does is what it does, but you aren't attached to the end goal of what is this going to do for me financially? What's my business plan for the next 6 months? You just live in life, and that happens to be the outcome that you're not even
Right.
working towards to get. And a huge other part of it with the growth aspect, if we talking growth, we talking movement. Everything in this universe in some way, shape, or form is moving. When you stop growing, you stop moving, and then there's death, right? So a cheat code that I started to realize that I give to a lot of my clients, especially a lot of the men that I work with, because we just take on so much pressure financially that we got to make it work. We kind of leave God out of the equation, and we just like, yo, whatever I got to do, I got to hustle. I got to get the bag and make sure my family is fed. There's merit to that, but there's also limitation. But one of the things you got to understand is money, currency, right? It's still energy. No matter what country you live in, no matter what those pieces of paper look like, it's a symbol of the energy you emit and receive. To a large degree, if you start to hoard too much of that quote unquote energy and what we call saving, we are conditioned to do this. I'm not saying spend all your money, but that bank account What's in your wallet, to a certain degree, you got to make sure there's still some movement, something going out as well as coming in. We so focused on coming in and keeping it that we block new levels of abundance that want to make their way into our bank account, but we still holding on tight to that $5,000 and scared of going down to $4,450. Sometimes I would get to the point where it's like, you know what? I feel like I'm in stagnance financially as far as what's in my account. Let me just go spend some money. It ain't got to be a huge amount, but it sends the message to the universe that you are comfortable with the fact that that $5,000 may not always be there. Sometimes it may be one. Sometimes it may be 100,000. My abundance is not in those numbers that are on my account. My abundance is in my ability to be a conduit and continuously allow energy to flow in as well as flow out. So a huge part of what blocks us from being able to get that next level of abundance is we doing this. If you ever seen Hoarders, the show, they houses look crazy. That's kind of what's happening on an energetic level with our finances because we so fearful of even losing a dollar. I just posted a story in my story on Instagram a couple weeks ago, an excerpt from Alan Watts, one of his lectures where he talks about when we go to the store and we buy groceries, you buy $60 worth of groceries, it's that tinge in your spirit. It's that angst, like, I gotta let go of this $60. As opposed to, I had the $60. I just traded in that $60 and I have nourishment. I got food for the next 2, 3 days. That's a beautiful thing. So you'll start to catch yourself in how you got that hoarding vibration and how you move about and spend your finances throughout the course of a day. Is sending a message to the universe that you're not ready for that free flow to continuously come through you.
Yeah, because I even recognize, I think probably early this year, I was like, man, I haven't really traveled.
Right.
And if you are or have been following me for a while, you know that my whole life has been traveling. I've enjoyed it. It did also serve in a lot of my healing, being in nature. I would travel into the mountains for months at a time, live in the mountains for months at a time, and just go to different countries. So it did serve a natural part in my healing journey to be in nature. But I recognize this year that I haven't traveled. And so a large part of that is because I don't utilize travel
Escape.
to escape, to find happiness, joy, or peace. I actually feel that on a daily basis now, and my home feels like every place that a person wants to go
Right.
and escape to. It feels like paradise. So I don't really have the desire, but I do have a desire to explore and adventure. That's naturally who I am. So why haven't I been doing that? And so when I really sat with that question earlier this year, I recognized that our IRS fee did have some type of hold over me,
Got
that
you.
fear
Right.
that was like, I can buy an outfit, but I can't
Right.
pay for a trip.
Right.
That's too big, right? So
Right.
I just spend a little bit in increments so I can't really see the lump sum of money. This is how the mind is working and aiding in me being fearful of this bill that just kind of at times feels like is, just sitting on top of my head. And so just acknowledging when you say that resistance to letting it go, trying to just hold it in, and when you're doing that, you're also holding in the fear, you're
Absolutely.
holding in the resistance, you're holding in all of the uncomfortability. And I don't want to live my life like that. So that's why my actually, I was like, where should we go this year? Because, like I said, no fear is going to punk me,
Facts.
especially when it comes to money. And because I trust and I have the faith that regardless of the money that we put out, it
It's always coming
always,
back.
always finds its way back. Are you holding the book so they can
Yeah,
see it?
product placement. You know
Thank you,
how daddy do.
baby. I wanted to read an excerpt out of the
I
book
got you.
before we moved on to our next topic. I think this will be like pretty good for us to do. But this excerpt is called,
It's even matched.
I know, this excerpt is called Answer the Call. And it reads, if your spirit is calling you to be still or end a self sabotaging cycle, answer the call. If your spirit is calling you to create and step into action, answer the call. If your spirit is calling you to release people, places, or things, answer the call. If your spirit is calling you to create a self love or self discipline routine, answer the call. If your spirit is calling you to be gentler, give yourself grace, and practice patience, answer the call. Evolving is about being a student of the soul, a student of your past, a student of your present, and a student to your pain, lessons, and emotions. Life is painful when we don't practice humbling our egos enough to listen. Only you know what your spirit is calling you to do. Only you know the shame, guilt, and embarrassment that comes when you dishonor, disregard, and disempower your intuitive voice. Only you will have to suffer the consequences of ignoring your internal compass. Practice being so in tune with yourself that you become clear when your spirit is sending you signs to change, slow down, stop, rest, pivot, adapt, move into action, or retreat to nature for further guidance. It's extremely difficult to hear your intuition, spirit, or soul guiding you if you are emotionally, mentally, spiritually clogged, unclear, or overwhelmed. In my line of work, I often hear so many of my clients complain about feeling lost, stuck, confused about life, behind, and out of alignment. The truth is, they aren't lost at all, they just aren't listening. Their entire being is attempting to get their attention, but they refuse to listen to their own guidance that comes from their own soul. And because of this disregard of self, they also must face the consequences and suffer from experiencing imposter syndrome, lack of motivation, insecurity, and depression. When you listen to the voices within that are created to guide you, there will be clarity on what is next for you or what you should be doing with your life. Most people aren't supposed to be doing anything but sitting in silence, sitting still, and meditating in nature until they are guided with further instructions. Today, give yourself permission to listen to the advice of your soul and remember who the F you are. Practice being so in tune with yourself that you become clear when your spirit is sending you signs to change, slow down, stop, pivot, adapt, move into action, retreat, or retreat to nature for further guidance.
And you didn't even know you was gonna read that in nature.
No, I did
It's a
it.
bar.
It's a bar.
The things, everything stood out, but the internal compass, of course, the nature part, and the clarity that comes with not saying. Well, we've been talking a lot about this week, about this week. Not saying I'm gonna be still, not saying I'm gonna be by myself, not saying I'm gonna sit my butt down. Actually doing it,
Actually doing
and
it.
not doing it for a day, not doing it for a weekend, and then going right back to talk to people about the fact that you did it and what you got from it.
Facts. Yeah.
Actually surrendering completely until God tells you, okay, now get off the porch. For me, that was pretty much like a 4-year catharsis, a 4-year process of me honing my own energy with no intentions on trying to guide nobody to nothing. When both of us was reluctant, quote unquote, healers, when we did get the download that we were supposed to do this, like, man, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I got mine for myself. I'm Gucci on all of that. But we are in this season where healing, the spirit sciences are so monetized, they're so lucrative, and people kind of hop off the porch before, they're fully baked, before they're fully cooked. They go out into the public prism and they put out these ideas, but they may not have their actual regimen in place. So you may see where their life kind of goes off track or goes haywire in ways where they feel like that doesn't represent the character I put up on social media. That doesn't represent the entity that I presented to the world, that this is what I am and I kind of know what I'm talking about. It's a lot of us that are skipping that process. And with the internal compass and the clarity, before you got to the book, it was the juice, the Juice book, right? The Juice ebook, the Van Life
Yep.
ebook,
Yep.
right? And those felt great when you first put those out. Those were stepping stones towards you realizing, yes, it was a season for that, but if you was fixed on what those did, you may not have gotten to the point to actually write, remember who the F you are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that clarity comes with being able to do exactly what God tells you to do when you're supposed to do it without attachment to result. And step A, in January may lead to step Z 2 years from now in February. And once you do it, it's like, oh snap. That's why I had that experience. That's why I had to sit my butt down after it. That's why I was able to understand and give myself 2 years to really allow this seed to develop. A lot of us are really not doing that work.
And that's, when it comes to like me writing this book, November, I was still. December, I was still. January, I was still. Now, obviously, we practice stillness, but there were times in our life where stillness and silence was not easy.
Right.
It was us grasping at something to feel better,
Right.
looking for medicine, and it became our medicine.
Right.
But if I did not acknowledge that my soul was telling me to sit my butt down, then I would not have even had the energy to complete this book,
Right.
to start this book.
Facts. You already been wiped out
Right. Because you saw how difficult it was for me to wake up early in the morning, go to sleep late at night,
for a
not,
month straight.
yes, not even being able to show up for you the way that I needed, not even being able to show up for my home the way that I'm needed as a wife. And so it just took so much out of me. It wasn't fun anymore. It was just me answering the call
Right.
because I knew I was being guided to do it.
Right.
But if I hadn't rested, if I hadn't stopped what I was doing November, December, and January, that means I'm not promoting on social media trying to make money. I'm not trying to tell people that I have openings for clients.
Right.
It means that I'm understanding that this is not the months that are meant for me to be in work. These are the months that's meant for me to rest. I didn't know why.
Right.
I just answered the call. I didn't know why I was being sat down
Right.
in that way. I just knew that it was my job to listen. And I think what people are fearful of is when they do finally sit still and get in silence, that other things will suffer. Business will suffer,
Right.
jobs will suffer, money will suffer. And to a large degree,
It
you
will.
are going to have to get very comfortable with allowing that to happen,
Exactly.
because you also trust that if those things are going to suffer, you'll also be able to rebuild them.
Exactly.
But
But they
what's
have to
the,
die first.
they have to die first. And what's the point in still having these things become beautiful accomplishments if you dishonoring yourself in the process?
Right.
If your soul is literally crying in the process, you got a business that's banging, you got money coming in, but you feel like you're dying on the inside. So at some point, you're going to have to listen and choose yourself and really get serious about sitting still. And typically, when you are being sat down to sit still and in silence, it ain't for 5 days. For the most part,
Right.
it's gonna be enough to where it's a struggle, to where
Right.
it makes you question why you're doing it. It's
Years.
gonna force you to surrender. And if surrender is not a part of that equation, then you probably aren't sitting still long enough. You probably aren't sitting in silence long enough, because it's not supposed to be easy. And people think that it's supposed to be easy.
Like, as I was saying, the 4 year catharsis, you have 4 years, right, in a different way. And like I just remember program after program, because of the stillness, because of the silence. And I wasn't heavy on social media. I wasn't trying to create a platform. Um, I remember programs starting to expose themselves, and having to watch them die and not being able to rely on those crutches no more. That is hurt. I just posted about the fact that from 1999 to pretty much 2021, 22, I was addicted to weed. Alcohol, women, sex, all these different things. So to come home for pretty much 3, 4 years, knowing my phone dry, knowing even if there are certain women I could call, I can't go back to that pro. It no longer feels comfortable, even if it was just a minute or so, well, more than a minute. But even if it was a stint of pleasure, it wasn't worth it no more. So I can't do that. It got to the point where even, smoking, that became my mate. That became my companion. Because at the end of the day, if ain't nobody else coming through, I know I could come back, roll something up, watch a movie, and just chill and just decompress. It got to the point where my spirit was saying, nope, it's time to transcend past this. So my entire foundation of comfort to get to that point of inch by inch, increment by increment, having that removed in a way that was doable. Because if it happens too fast. This is why, you talk a lot about people doing the psychedelics, and we don't tell nobody what to do or what not to do, but sometimes there is a certain value to gradually allowing this process to happen. A lot of us want that instant gratification.
Right.
Clients are always asking, all right, so when am I going to be healed? We go to the ayahuasca to try to hurry up and get there. But watching that painstaking day in and day out process, 3 to 4 years, like, bro, it got to the point where I had to surrender. I may never have a woman again. I may never have like real solid brothers again. All my brothers didn't understand where I was at no more. I had nobody to lean on. Narcotics didn't do it for me. So to incrementally, inch by inch, watch myself die over the period of 3 or 4 years and not being gung ho to go tell people, oh, look what I'm doing. Look what I got from it. No, that was
Right.
literally me, God, and the previous versions of myself starting to be able to hand over lessons to the version of myself that I was becoming and what y'all see before me right now. And this social media age, is beautiful and as connective as it is, it puts us in this rush to go get in front of that camera. We cry at 9:30 in the morning. By 12 o'clock, we got to post up.
Teaching other people.
Right, teaching other people when the full blossoming of the lesson hasn't even been able to download to you
Right.
yet. When I first started to study Gyanism and self-analysis, Atma Vichara, this is the aspect of yoga where you go past tradition, you go past technique, and you start to focus on the field of awareness day in, day out, every single moment. Even right now, I'm still in connection with that field. But one of the first things they would tell you is when that starts to connect for you, when it goes back just when it goes beyond just concept and conversation and understanding, don't talk to nobody about it. I didn't really understand why they would say that because I come from a Christian background. Go evangelize, go tell the world about Jesus, right? I started to figure out, like, yo, this is real. Why don't I go tell somebody about it? When you do that and a relationship isn't fully developed, it's almost like you are taking away some of the sacredness of what you're supposed to be building, mate to mate, God to self, to human being. And that takes time to process.
And also, when you give a message before it's time to give the message, like I said in the last podcast, your soul gave you that message.
Exactly.
That means they told you to sit down and they told you to implement, and you rob yourself of your own soul's healing when you start to market it to other people
Right.
as if it's your own intelligence.
Right.
Like you have been born, with this wisdom,
Right.
and now you are selling it and marketing it to other people to advance your ego and
Right.
feel like you are the all be all with all of the information.
Right.
You rob yourself of your own opportunity to really allow it to marinate in your body and your spirit and your soul and really be able to embody and implement those lessons. But what you were speaking about in regards to not being able to rely on things. So you weren't able to rely on those things. I wasn't able to rely on alcohol or relationships or sex, right? Our journeys always mirror one another.
Facts.
And that is extremely painful. It does not feel good to
Mm-mm.
have all of these emotional wounds, emotional traumas. And when you get home, you mean to tell me there's nothing I can do to escape from them? I can't drink. I can't escape. Right now, I'd already like finessed all my days at work, so I can't travel. I can't escape that way.
Threw my TV away, like,
Right,
yeah.
facts. So you mean to tell me I have to just sit in how I feel? And yes, you
Yeah.
have to. This is how you build spiritual stamina. This is why no matter what happens, I'm not fearful.
Mm-hmm.
This is why no matter what happens, I know I can get through it. I know I can evolve through it. I know I can heal and grow through it because I've grown through my own darkness
Right.
and I still willingly participate in my own darkness to be able to dissect my demons and find out what they're feeding on. This is how you build spiritual stamina. But if the second you get home and things start getting difficult and you start feeling afraid and it's like, I need to escape, you start flinching because you're afraid of pain. Now, when a huge situation happens and it's stressful, you get anxiety, you get depressed, that's because you haven't built your spiritual stamina.
Right.
You haven't built your spiritual muscle. You haven't built the tools or cultivated the tools that are necessary to get you through any type of situation. And that requires you to be steadfast when emotional pain or emotional discomfort or situational discomfort is present. If you run every time a situation makes you feel uncomfortable, or you choose to rely and rest on ego to make you, to convince you at like you learned your lesson,
Right.
then when real lessons come and attempt to put you on your behind, you're not going to have the tools to actually deal with them. So when we had those 3 years, 4 years of solitude, of stillness, of silence, that's where we were able to build our spiritual stamina and our spiritual muscles and our emotional intelligence, to where now when things happen, we don't even have to rely on one another to really go in and feel better, because we have those tools within ourselves. Obviously, we hold space for one another in a very beautiful way.
Right.
But my husband been doing that before me.
Right.
I've been doing that before
Likewise.
him,
Yep.
right? I've been able to do very well by myself as
Right.
far as healing, growing, and evolving. So right now we accent each other.
Right.
We're beautiful conduits to help each other just evolve just a little bit more. But we have those tools because we've been working on those tools on our own. And now when any situation arises, we have the ability to actually heal, grow, and evolve through them.
Absolutely. And with the expressing before you fully download it, there's a certain energy that comes when you receive a download, when you got a certain piece of wisdom that comes through. You are excited about receiving that piece of information, whether it comes from a book, whether it comes from prayer or meditation or wherever it comes from. There's a certain level of I got that, and you are excited. You want to do something with that energy. We good? You want to do something with that energy. When you go straight to emitting that energy, you actually take some of the energy you need to be able to start to implement the lesson. You kind of give away all your coins and spend it on, look what I just learned, y'all, as opposed to holding it close to your chest, holding it in your heart. And now that excitement goes into your system, and you are excited about not with somebody telling you that you're smart for having that epiphany. You're excited about starting to actually implement. So a lot of times we spin in the bag of our own evolution on being able to express to somebody else what we just learned, as opposed to actually keeping it for ourselves and allowing it to develop. And when you do that, that spiritual fortitude, that spiritual stamina, it works multiple different ways. It shows up in ways where you're not even cognizant. When I was breaking the program of being addicted to weed, when I put up the post, one of my brothers asked me, like, yo, did you just go cold turkey? Pardon my French. Hell no. Like, it was a long process of when I first got the download, I ain't smoked for 6 months. My bro got murdered. I was shooting in a film, a movie, and I felt like when I was there, I literally felt a darkness in that area. We in like the bottom of the neck in Newark or whatever. I felt the darkness as soon as I finished my role. I got out of there. I took my family home. By the time I got home, I got the text like, "Yo, G just got murdered." Right? That sent me back into a tailspin. So that 6 months of being clean for the first time in 15 years went right down the drain because I got knocked on my butt in a way where I probably wasn't prepared for. Went right back to smoking probably for another 7, 8 months consistently. Had to have every drop of that 7, 8 months push me back to a space where it's like, nah, I'm ready to give it up again. And there was this ebb and flow of bigger pockets of not smoking, smaller pockets of smoking, but that spiritual fortitude that came with me sitting with the lesson, one, gave me the motivation to pick myself up after 7, 8 months and saying, we're going to try it again. It also gave me the self grace. It gave me the self appreciation to understand, don't feel guilty because you just smoked. Don't feel guilty because you 7 months back into quote unquote this habit. This is the ebb and flow of evolution. So we leave out all these different keys when we so gung ho to go give it to social media or give it to the world. Hold it for yourself for a little while. Watch what happens.
Yeah, and that kind of like reminds me of when Alan Watts speaks about the ego, and he refers to the ego being a little rascal. And I can't remember the name of the lecture, but it's a lecture where he acknowledges how the ego elevates to a different form as the person elevates. So the ego is never uncovered. And it's so subtle, it's so
Right.
intelligent. It makes you feel as if, y'all, I just learned this. Let me teach this about
Right.
you. So ego steps in like, well, I don't want to feel like I don't know nothing. So I'm going to teach other people
Right.
so they can recognize that I do know things. It's just a subtle way of getting validation. It also happens when people attempt to listen to many podcasts to get a lot of information. They read many books to get a lot of information. And to a large degree, it's like, well, good. You are, learning. You're attempting to do your research and find out more information. But then you have to start asking yourself the question, which version of you is reading that book? Which version of you is listening to that podcast? Is
Right.
it truly the one that wants to learn so you can heal, grow, and evolve? Or is it the version of your ego that really feels as if, yep, we just read a book.
Right.
Yep, we just learned this information. There's so many nuances to when the soul is giving you specific information and it's coming from a very pure place. And when you rush to use that information for your own validation and for your own advancement or to feel any type of emotion, you're very clear that it's coming from an egoic place. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot on social media is many people who are going through hell.
Right.
Life is putting them on their butt.
Right.
And instead of just sitting in their hell, and it's a self inflicted hell. So instead of just sitting in the prison that they've created within themselves, they choose to find any type of inkling of information, knowledge, or wisdom,
Mm.
and then go monetize it.
Monetize. Yep.
And they rob themselves of what could have been a beautiful 3 month span of them healing and no longer having to revisit the same emotional painful situations. So now that they taught their lesson to the world,
Right.
they got to relearn the lesson again, probably in 2 years.
And the lesson wasn't even fully developed yet that they
Yeah.
gave to the world.
So the lesson's going to reappear in another 2 years. And then they're going to be plagued with, I thought I healed from this. I hear so many people say that all the time.
Right.
I thought I healed from this. I thought I grew out of this. Like I don't understand. And to a large degree, it's like ego probably allowed you to feel very comfortable and yeah, I'm good. Like that doesn't bother me
Right.
anymore. But your spirit is saying, no, you still have work to do. You bypassed certain levels and now I have to bring it back to you.
And when you take the approach of giving underdeveloped personal lessons to the public, now your karma is intertwined with the karma of what they're gonna have to experience because they listening to you. Because you got a certain level of magnetism, you got a certain amount of followers. Now your karma is intertwined with what they're gonna have to go through because you didn't fully process the information that was coming to you from spirit. And as you do so and you take a knock and that message shows you I'm not fully developed yet and it puts you on your butt in some way, shape, or form, now you got to go through that in the public sight. Now this creates even more turmoil with this new version of the ego that's like, I'm educated, I'm lit, I got wisdom. It has to continuously take these hits in front of people, and that exacerbates the program of other people's perceptions and OPP. It's funny in the part that we talked about closing the gate, and the clip that I put up is kind of going viral on Facebook right now. A lot of discussion. It's like 3,000 comments on there at some point. I think about 200,000 views. And a lot of the brothers feel like somebody's finally speaking out for some of the things we feel. A lot of the women, every now and then I just dip into the comments. I don't really respond. But a lot of the women like are tearing me apart, and the brothers is like low key defending me. Like, he's telling y'all how we work, and y'all saying, he's all these different things. But one of the things that the women have been saying is that any man that can feel the angst of something as small as close the gate, he's not mature enough. He's not spiritually developed. He's overly sensitive. He a BAS, if you will, no BAN, if you will. A lot of different things. With that being said, we are both to a degree where a lot of our content goes viral. And one, I can look at those comments and literally laugh at it. Literally have no compulsion to go defend who I am to these people. Our job is to just put out the information that we feel compelled to and leave it at that. There are going to be people that agree, people that don't. I'm cool with that. But the other part to it is when you get to the point where you are fully developing your lessons in that clip that I put up, I talked about the angst I felt from previous versions of myself in those moments where you would tell me to close the gate. I wasn't owning those emotions. So you even have the spiritual adeptness to be able to experience a very intense emotion while still having distance from it, while still not becoming it. A lot of the women was like, if he's getting mad for that, I wasn't getting mad. I felt these previous versions of myself because I have and continuously fully process what they have to tell me day in and day out. And this is what comes back to, well, I thought I healed from that. This is a continuous fallout of information from every day version of yourself that you have been up to this point. These are continuous conversations that have to happen throughout eternity. This life cycle and then all the life cycles that my soul has experienced are constantly talking to me. If you don't vet this process properly, it's so much that you're going to end up missing, and it's going to harm you.
Yeah, I agree. But I think the part that people aren't aware of is they are just thinking as if they are processing time, situations, and emotions as this present version of themselves. And that is just not the case at all. You are processing emotions, thoughts,
Right.
situations from lifetimes ago. This
Right.
is why when they'll say, "Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed today?" Which version of you woke up on the wrong side of the bed today? Because how you respond to a compliment today, you may respond to that same compliment differently tomorrow. So, which is the version of you that responded to that compliment in a beautiful, happy, and positive way versus the one that actually felt a way about it?
Right.
So, it's acknowledging that there's so many different energies, entities, personalities, personas, characters that were created through emotional trauma that live within our subconscious mind. Based on trauma, the brain has to figure out ways to adapt to continue to keep the person alive. So to a large degree, what it'll do is create different personalities which stay at that same age until you go back and heal those versions of yourself. So if you're somebody who's 6 years old and you experience being abandoned by a certain person, now when you get older, there may be moments where you're
Exactly.
responding from the 6 year old you and you don't even know it.
Right.
So when you say, like, I felt the angst or whatever, we don't know what version of
Right.
him felt the angst. It's
It
not
wasn't even this
ex-
doctor's. Like,
exactly. So that's why he says you can acknowledge the
right.
emotion without attaching to it because you're not even fully sure where it comes from, who it comes from, but you are allowed to honor that emotion and that feeling is there and move forward in that way. And I think that when we are clear on all of the different versions of our being,
Right.
we can also be clear on who is showing up, why they're showing up, how we can honor those different versions of our being,
Right.
what they need, and we can explain to our partners or friends or people around us why we're responding in the way that we're responding without allowing people outside of us to dismiss us.
Right.
And when we respond in these ways, when other people outside of us may not understand how we feel, how we express emotion, we may have to become comfortable with being the villain.
Right.
We may have to become comfortable with not being understood. The average person is not going to understand that the average person has multiple personalities.
Absolutely.
And so if I don't, I can only meet you as deeply as you've met yourself.
Right.
So if you don't have the ability to understand that version of the conversation, you will say that I'm being overly emotional. And so I have to just be overly emotional in your book because you don't even have the capacity to hear or
Mm.
fully comprehend the level of intelligence and wisdom that I'm portraying.
Mm.
So everyone's not going to have the ability to understand you.
And even down to the sovereignty we talked about, because you at 120K at this point, and you had a big following before, lost your whole joint, had to build that back up. But even with the sovereignty and the clarity you talked about in your excerpt of where's that? Where's that? Come on, product placement. Remembering who the F you are by Candace Love, right? The excerpt that you expounded on when COVID-19 happened, right?
Right.
We were villains and a lot of people who thought like us, but especially within our families, Like my parents wouldn't even let me come visit them for 2 years. I didn't see my sister, my niece, my parents for 2 years because there was so much fear. And one, not only am I not getting vaccinated, two, I'm out here doing peace in the parks. Hundreds of people constantly doing events and showing up everywhere, traveling, all this different stuff. So in that capacity, I looked like a villain. I looked like I was jeopardizing other people's health and well-being as well as my family's. And by us having that clarity, by us honoring these aspects of ourselves, we was able to remove ourselves from the workforce before it was mandated that we was gonna have to put something in our body we wasn't
Right.
comfortable with. We
Right.
was able to eject from the program before the program even became a mandate. And on the other end of the spectrum, 2 years, 2.5 years removed, it's still out there, but not to the degree it was. Now seeing my family members who have got vaccinated still got it multiple times, right? Seeing all the fears they had about me and me jeopardizing myself and other people, none of that came to be. Seeing me having our biggest level of expansion in a time where the world was shut down, that don't happen without moments of me being able to recognize there's some version of me that feels angst when my wife tells me to close the gate. It correlates. So for you to skip these aspects of yourself, that skippage comes from you skipping, you fully vetting and downloading this information before you give it out to the world. And let me ask you a question real quick too. My platform is growing, but you got 120K. That's extremely viable in today's social media. Like you lit, right? How do you navigate some of the negative talk that comes on the YouTubes, on the Instagram posts, people telling you why you gotta wear that, or all these different things that come? How do you navigate that other people's perception that's um magnified by so many degrees when you're talking about social media and you having the type of platform that you have?
Yeah, I think the biggest way that I navigate it is because I know who I am.
Got you.
And I know that I
Got you.
live in my truth.
Right.
And I know that I walk in my truth. I know that I maintain spiritual integrity. And everyone is allowed to have their own opinions and their own perspectives. They still dumb. They still some dumb dumbs, and I'm
Ah.
still gonna call them dummies. But to a large degree, it's because I know who I
Word
am.
one, facts.
And I'm clear that I can only meet a person as deeply as they've met themselves.
Selves.
So if they have not gone that deep within themselves, how they perceive me will be surface. What they get
Mm.
out of what I say will
Will be
be the
surf.
surface.
Yeah,
That's why, under
absolutely.
the comments, they be like, so you think this or you think this, like, is that what
I
you got
did.
out of what I
I did
said? That
not
ain't what
even
I
say that.
said. I ain't say that. And I have to recognize that they don't mean any
Right.
harm. Even when they do, even when it is personal, it's really not personal. They just cannot help that they haven't gone that far within themselves. So, even, and I've had practice
Hmm.
because when I transitioned from van life, as you all know, I started my platform with van life and it grew a lot. And a lot of people had me in a box. I allowed a lot of
Right.
people to put me in a box. Let me take accountability for that. I allowed a lot of people to put me in a box to speak about and look and think and speak the way that they wanted me to.
Right.
And then when I was like, I don't want to talk about this no
I
more.
can't talk about one more Cadillac converter.
Listen, yes, I can't talk about another water pump, how my kitchen works, how I
Right.
use the restroom when I'm on the road. I can't
Right.
talk about it no
And
more.
she was getting hundreds of thousands of views
Yes, my
on YouTube.
YouTube was growing crazy. My TikTok was, I went viral, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And so all of my following just like lit up. And to a large degree, I had to honor myself and say, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to talk about healing. I want to talk about growing. Like
Mm.
that's what my passion is. And when I did that, I got a lot of crazy comments, especially on YouTube. A lot of people who were just mean, saying things that were so unnecessary. And also, I would lose like five.
Thousands of followers a
Yeah,
day.
500 to 1,000 followers a day on all platforms. My YouTube was at 70. I think right now I'm like at 40.
Mhm.
I lost many followers, and I had to recognize when I'm walking in my truth, it's not going to always resonate with everybody's
Absolutely.
spirit. And so if it's true to me, those that mind don't matter and those that matter don't mind.
Exactly.
And I really stand firm in that. So it makes it a lot easier to just call people dumb
Right.
as opposed to just take what they say to heart.
Right. And once you get to that point, you realize how much energy you conserve to have more stillness, to get more downloads, because you're not going to war trying to prove to people who you know yourself to be, whether it's
Right.
social media, whether it's your family. Now it's a matter of this what I feel. If I'm expressing this how I'm expressing, I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't need to explain myself to you no more because I need that energy to create these platforms I'm creating.
Exactly. And I will block people
Facts. Shout out to
fast.
Big K.
Straight up, right. I'll block people fast. I've even had people like go to my husband and be like, I said something on
What?
your
Stop
wife's
coming to
page.
my DM, bro. She blocked you. She
Listen,
blocked you. I don't want to hear it
when they can't get in touch with me, they love to go to my
because
husband and be
I'm the
like,
good cop.
I don't know what I said. You know what you said, okay? And I don't respond to nothing. Boop, block. Oop,
Right.
delete. I will
Right.
delete your comment. I will block you from my page just because it doesn't have permission to exist in my
Right.
reality. That type of energy, especially because the only thing that I put out is great energy. I put out good energy. I'm supportive. Everything that I'm doing is to give other people the information of healing, growing, and evolving. They can take it or leave it, but I don't give anybody negative energy ever.
Right.
So if that is something that is coming to me, I instantly block it. It
And
doesn't have permission to exist in my
and I
reality.
realize now, even in me existing in that space now too, and just hearing you say that in this moment, there was a time where I would do the opposite. I would say, well, it don't bother me. So anybody could leave anything. You remember, I would leave all type of comments on my
Right.
joint. And low key, it was still ego trying to say, look, show people that you can take it. Now it's to the point where
Mm,
no, I don't gotta hold that energy. And if you feel like I'm weak for removing your comment or blocking you from my page, I don't have to defend that either. I don't want that type of energy on my timeline. So even that nobility
right.
of y'all can leave whatever y'all want on my page, it don't even that sneaky ways that ego shows up and is trying to defend yourself to other people in ways that look like the
Right.
complete opposite.
That's big. That's really big. And I think too, it's like having that sovereignty over your reality means that you do get to choose what
Facts.
comments, even when it comes down to Instagram. Most of y'all, I hope that you are paralleling this to your actual real life, but
Right.
Instagram is real too. I hate when people say
Yeah,
Instagram's not
absolutely.
real. It's a very real reality. But even when it comes to having sovereignty over that reality,
Yeah.
no, you don't get to speak to me any kind of
Right.
way on Instagram. You don't get to leave any kind of comment on Instagram, especially if it's one and you ain't even read the full caption.
Hey,
Block
exactly.
and delete.
Facts.
So I get to have sovereignty over what I want to allow into my reality. And
Right.
even the people who are coming onto my page, I get to have sovereignty on what I want them to experience
Right.
when they are introduced to me. So I don't want y'all to see crazy comments, weird comments that are
Right.
just throwing daggers at me for no reason. I want y'all to see the positivity. And yes, to a large degree, maybe that can be seen as controlling, but it's
But this is your
also it's
universe.
my universe. And so I decide that in this universe, I only want it to be about healing, growing, and evolving.
Hmm.
And conflict is a part of that.
Hmm.
But it's going to be conflict from my narrative. It
Right.
ain't going to be conflict because you woke up on the wrong side of the
Right.
bed, you was triggered, and now you want to start an argument under
Right.
my page. Go do it under your mama page.
Exactly.
Don't bring that over here.
Right.
So I love that you mentioned that even like responding or leaving the comments was still a certain part of acknowledging that you were showing that you could still take it.
Right.
And so, can you tell us about where you are now in regards to that same sentiment?
Yeah, I was just about to say it'll be times where, and it's a difference between conflict as far as the comment section or just people having different POVs. It's a difference between being conflictive and inquisitive, right? We can
Right.
disagree in a way where, as long as you're respectful, you kind of
Yeah.
want more information based on what I'm saying, and you don't even know if you're going to agree with it or not. But there's enough merit in what you saw to say, "All right, can you break this down a little bit more?" I don't know if I. We could do that all day, right? But I was about my bad. I was about to say that sometimes I come to you when people are trying to gun me, or you even. And I'm like, look, baby, I gunned him back, right?
Yeah,
It's still in
yeah.
a respectful way. It's always gonna be with love when it come to me. I got a very loving spirit, and even if I gotta bring the Newark Neguah out of me, you still gonna get that with love. But I'm proud of the fact now that I have enough detachment from those old programs in my ego, where I can still appreciate, not even defend. I can still show appreciation for this version of Docs and all the work he has done to be able to be this vocal, this open, this expressive. And if you come at me a certain way, I'ma appreciate him and my comment. I'ma still give you a nugget, a jewel that may be able to reflect your imbalance in how you wrote your comment, and then I'm gonna get you
Right.
out of here, right?
Yeah.
So to be, and I'm not gonna ever think about you again. So to be able to be at that level of detachment from other people's perception, even in some of my relationships with my son's mother, with my mom, my sister, when we may disagree on certain things, or I may need to interject how I feel about something or how I want something to go, I'm gonna do that, and I'm not really gonna be worried about if you're looking at me negatively as a result. It is what it is. I have so much spiritual fortitude. I have so much callous that has been developed, that program that really wreaks havoc on a lot of men, especially a lot of black men's mind, because we are deemed as the villain to the world. And we
Right.
got to wear that to a large degree. So when it comes to our family, to our wife, to our kids, we go that extra mile to be the antithesis of that, even to our own detriment, even to the degree where we don't express ourselves, where we swallow our truth, where we try to walk on eggshells a little bit too much. I'm to the point where the gloves have come off. I'm a punch you, but I'm gonna punch you with love. But I'm going to send my shot if I feel the need to, and I'm not gonna feel bad about doing that. So it's a beautiful space and freedom.
Yeah, because there used to be a time, like with your son's mother, where she had this thing to where she would say, like, I don't feel safe. Like, that's why I don't
Right.
feel safe with you.
Right.
And if you weren't doing what she wanted you to do,
Right.
and you had to get to a point to where it was like, how you view me, one has nothing to do with the conversation, but people acknowledging that to a large degree, if you do care about what they think of
Mm-hmm.
you, that they can use that against you.
Right.
So saying something like, that's why I don't trust you,
Right.
being able to throw that in your face to now make you kind of quiver
Right.
to
And I
not
would.
be seen
Yeah.
as the
I
villain.
would.
You know, to not be seen as the villain, to still do what she or anyone else will want you to do. And for you now to be in a place to where it don't matter how you see me. I'm still going to say how I feel. I'm still going to, work towards what's right. And I love, and we used to have this thing to where we would send like warrior, like the warrior sword and the warrior shield,
Yeah.
because I know that you've had so many past relationships to where they have like made you out to be the villain.
The
And even
narcissist. Yeah.
and yeah, I hate when people misuse that word, because you ain't no narcissistic trait in your body. And even for myself personally, I've had to acknowledge moments where I may be upset about something and may want to point the finger, and also acknowledging, am I also making him out to be the villain in this moment? So not even just putting it on your son's mom or your relationships before that, but also taking accountability and acknowledging when I can possibly be falling into like that behavior as well. And to now
Mm.
get to a place to where it's like,
Right.
you my wife, but you either.
Yeah.
You either. You
I'm
ain't
not doing this.
fat.
Put my clothes on at 12 o'clock at night.
Straight
Took my walk.
up.
I'm
And
out.
took his walk. I'm like, babe, take your phone. But yeah, even him telling me as well, no, you aren't even allowed to make me feel like I'm a villain, and I know that I'm coming with my best intention.
Right.
And so nobody is allowed to speak to us in certain ways or treat us in certain ways, even when it comes down to social media, Instagram comments. They
Right.
like, that's the zone zoned in part.
Right.
But even outside of that, the family, the friends, having sovereignty over our own reality means that we get to decide how we show up. We get to decide how we respond. We get to decide what we entertain. And we get to decide what we choose not to entertain, regardless of how the other person is going to feel about it as a result.
And two things come with that, and we about to finish up, y'all. We'll finish this, and then we'll talk a little bit about the celibacy aspect of solitude. People been asking about that. We'll get to infidelity on another episode because that's a full episode in itself. I know people
Right.
been wanting to know about that. But two things to what you just said. One, intuitive confidence. Two, going back to the clarity you talked about. What do I mean by intuitive confidence? There would be moments, because you talked about in our previous episode, you may not have developed your conflict muscle to be able to sit in a disagreement and go to
Yeah.
A to Z to figure out all these different nuances.
Yeah.
I've had to do that in previous relationships. So on one hand, I've gotten very sharp at that. And usually, if a topic comes up that's disagreeable with me or somebody else, I've looked at that thing from 10,000 different angles already. And not just to see if I'm right, to see if I'm bugging, to see if I got blind spots. I may not always be 100% perfect in the process, but I'm going to put forth the effort to look at this from 10,000 different ways, 5,000 that correlate to me, 5,000 that correlate to whatever this person may be thinking or feeling about what we disagreeing about. That's one. Two, the other part of the intuitive confidence, the work we talking about, sitting in these lessons, the 4 years of solitude, the sacrifices we made. I done put too much stain into the game to allow somebody who may not have put that stain or may not have built that spiritual fortitude and muscle to tell me that I haven't done it. To tell me that how I feel about a particular topic is not balanced when I know not only do I have that foundation, I'm still doing that work every day. So that gives me a certain level of intuitive confidence to still scrutinize myself. That even with that confidence, I could still be off in something and may need more information from that other person based on the disagreement. But with that being said, I have given myself the scope of all these different levels of effort where I know my true north, 9 times out of 10, is pretty on point. I've seen that in how my own life has unfolded. I've seen that in how we have been able to connect. So when somebody come and tell me, no, you shouldn't have done that, what we really talking about? And have you put in this thing for your own life to even have the autonomy to say that to me? 9 times out of 10, the people
Right.
haven't.
Right.
So that's where that intuitive. I believe in the work I put in constantly with God, day in and day out. Even when me and my son's mother was at some of our most wits end, on the fritz, she would still tell me certain things like, you know what, people could question you about a lot of things. I know the community may have turned their back on you in a lot of ways, but I never question the work I've seen you put in hours at a time of chanting, of mantras, of meditation, of going into the far. I've seen you really put that work in. I know you're not fronting on that. So that builds a certain level of confidence in yourself where you're not moved because other people say you bugging. And then that, that comes with the clarity of knowing that part from the Bible, split the baby in half.
Right.
What
Right.
is it, Solomon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all both be all right. Cut the baby in half. We're gonna see who really cares about that baby. You start to have that level of clarity come on in real time of how to handle these moments, how to handle these situations. We got our certain mechanics of how we approach counseling, but 90% of it is intuitive. Most of these people we have not met in the flesh, and we got to in real time be able to allow our spirit to communicate to this person what they specifically need. Do they need firmness? Do they need compassion? We got to know that in real time. So we
Yeah.
constantly developing that muscle. So watch yourself when you come for us.
Facts. Because I'm going to block you.
Facts.
And don't go running to his page
Uh,
because he ain't going to say nothing
nah.
either.
All right, so let's finish up just with a few quips on how you handled your celibacy, because that's a major blockage. Of course, the narcotics, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's the fentanyl, the weed, the alcohol, or sex. Those are the two main blockages keeping people from being able to honor themselves. So I think we had a very early conversation where I was asking you, like, you told me it was 4 years. I had did my year.
Yeah.
You did 4 years. Like, talk to people about what that was like, being able to scale yourself back from having that level of release.
Yeah, so I wrote about this in my book. I wrote about all of this in my book, but specifically, I went into detail of my relationships. And honestly, I had dishonored myself so much, been in so many relationships that I had no business being a part of.
Right.
They put me on my butt, and it was so much emotional pain that I had to listen.
Right.
Like I had no other choice but to listen to what I was being guided to do. I knew I didn't have no business in a relationship, and if I wasn't in a relationship, I wasn't having sex. So I honored myself, I honored my body, and it wasn't about not having sex. And I think when people are like celibate, specifically women, it's like I'm not having sex. And that was never my goal. It was never my
Right.
intention. My intention was just to heal, grow, and evolve. And how can I do that if I'm entertaining other people? That was really my logic. So if
And then that
healing,
became the sex.
and exactly. So if healing, growing, and evolving means spending all time by myself, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to be celibate for 4 years. It means nobody is allowed to share space with me. And it
Right.
was it. And it wasn't just romantic partners. I wasn't going out with friends. I wasn't going anywhere. I would go to work and I would go home. I would go in nature. I would go in the woods and I was exploring. I was riding my bike. I was adventuring with my dog. And that was it. So I wasn't around people. I really was in solitude, and it just happened to not include relationships. It just happened to not include sex because it wasn't on my mind.
Right.
I wasn't controlled by that. And it wasn't supposed to be 4 years.
Right.
There was no time. It wasn't like, okay, I'm a heal, grow, and evolve. I'm gonna give myself a year.
Right.
And then that magically turns into 2 years. It was just like, I know I'm being called to really focus on my healing. And that lasted 4 years. And I became in love with my process.
Mm.
I became in love with being by myself in
Right.
my solitude and enjoying my life. Even though I was deeply depressed, I was really sad. I was really going through all of the pain that comes with emotional healing. It wasn't this beautiful, luxurious, life. I was outside taking pictures in the sun and my skin was shining, but those were sporadic moments.
Right.
The other moments were really digging out the gunk of trauma and digging through the debris and the emotional pain and really wiping my wounds that were still bleeding. And that just lasted 4 years. And if I'm 100% honest,
Hmm.
I've been on my journey for a very long time,
Absolutely.
maybe like 10 years
Yeah.
at this point.
Same.
I would say that the uptick of my journey is the year 2020,
Yeah. Yeah.
the year I met you.
Likewise.
And so when people are like, well, how long is it gonna take? Well, listen, if you trying to count time, you gonna set yourself up for failure because I was doing great all of those years. I was still 60 pounds overweight. I
Right.
was still at a job I didn't want to be in. I was
Right.
still depressed, but I was still intentional about my healing journey. But I'm just now seeing the results of 7 years of work that I
Right.
put in. So that celibacy was just my dedication to myself. It was not about not having sex with a man. No man, no person had permission to exist in my reality at that time.
And you were so committed. We were so committed to that type of sex, sacred energy exchange with ourself and with Source that the timeline didn't exist, and the possibility that I may not reap the benefits in my human experience of this in this life cycle. We had to be okay with that too. I
Facts.
may not level up. I may not get lit on Instagram. I may not be able to
Man,
fend for myself. I may have to work a hard job for the rest. I accept that too, right? So
man.
it goes even deeper than just the timeline. But the other part of you talking about 2020, I remember the first two posts I saw from you. I do the second one first. I think it was like a little. I don't know if Rails was popping back then, but you had make like a little video with that thong, that thong,
That thong, the thong, thong, thong.
Freudian slip. That song, she thick, right? And
Yeah.
you had to,
DJ
and
chose.
she looking 60 pounds, quote unquote overweight. She looking,
Thank you, baby.
that was the second post, but the first post I saw of her, it was on her birthday, like I always talk about, and she's in this bikini in the middle of nowhere in this like mystical, magical place. So just the image itself is like, damn, like who that? And mind you, not in an overtly sexual way. It was still some sexual energy there, but I wasn't in that space. But I just recognized one, your beauty physically. Two, the beauty of the environment that you was in by yourself with just your dog, right?
Right.
Just for you to be in a space like that on your birthday, I'm like, nah, this is different. And then I go on to read the caption. So it was already a certain level of magnetism, but the words, the intention behind the words is what got me. And that was you talking about your 3.5 years to that point of solitude. And I
Yeah.
always say the way you have put that together in that caption, I knew that wasn't a front for Instagram. I knew you had actually lived that because I lived that. So
Right.
it no longer was just, oh, she's in this mystical magical place, she looking good, body right, bikini, melanin dripping, all this other stuff. It was now I could feel the resonance of your sacrifices. I could feel the vibration of the purity that you had established for yourself and removing yourself from the outside world, removing yourself from other male energy. I felt all of that and seeing just that picture.
Right.
And even with the bikini, it wasn't distasteful. You were still fully clothed and all of that. I think you didn't have the hat on in that one, but it was still tasteful. It wasn't like some of these pictures
Yeah.
we be seeing in videos on Instagram nowadays, but it wasn't about that. I could feel the work you put in via that image from 1,400 miles away. Still didn't try to holler at you, but we know time went on and we here now, whatever. But I say that to say that we are in a world where, poly life is extremely popular. We in a world where a lot of women are telling you, be like the men. Let's just get straight to the sex and things of this
And
nature.
please don't listen to
Bruh, a
that,
lot of
y'all.
that is going on. And there may be a certain magnetism to that too for a certain type of man. But even women in those spaces at the core of themselves, they still don't want this relationship. They still want this type of resonance in a union. And what I saw in that picture meant more than if I had met her at a bar and I took her home the first night and she just rocked my world sexually and all. That meant more than any of that could have ever done. So on a lot of levels, when we haven't resolved these aspects with ourselves and the soul poly, go back and check that episode if you haven't seen that. If you are in this poly type of experience, people that have their number. I'm not going to mess with more than 3 or 4 people at a time, right? But you messing with 40 different versions of yourself that haven't been processed on top
Okay.
of 3, 4, 5, 10 people that you're also having that sexual experience with.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why it ends up blowing up. This is why it ends up getting to the degree where you realize over and over, I should have done more vetting. I should have stayed by myself a little bit longer. This is what the value, the benefit of what the world is going to tell you the opposite. That celibacy ain't going to do it. That self-love not going to make you feel good. Trust me, this is really the cheat code. I'm not saying do it for the rest of your life, but really give your all to really just loving on yourself and watch what it's going to do for you.
Absolutely. So, I think we should end with you also sharing your experience about um your year.
I remember 3 months in, I had just got back from the retreat and I had been about almost a year removed from my ex, the 13-year relationship I always talk about. I was like a year in, but it was still a lot of residue there. I had thrown myself into the spirit sciences, thrown myself into meditation. So I was making a lot of leeway at like fully detaching my soul from that relationship. Um, 3.5 months in, just got back from the retreat, and there was a moment where it just came super intense that I wanted to hit her up. Hadn't spoken to her in a long time, but for whatever reason, I guess the fullness of that vetting process of that version of myself that stayed in that for 13 years, he was coming to the surface. I literally wrote the text like 10 different times. I literally dialed the number like 5 different times, kept hanging up the phone, kept hanging up the phone. Man, in that moment, like I was literally crying, like I don't want to do this cycle no more. No matter how great it would feel to have a moment of sex to reconnect with her, I can't do this no more. Threw myself into one of the meditative tools I had at the time and realized that was the most intense missing somebody had ever got in my life. But me just redirecting that energy, standing firm, that spiritual fortitude, I planted my flag, started to meditate. Within 5 minutes, it was like that wave, that intense wave had never even happened. It was like, damn, I just missed her more than I ever missed another human being. And 5 minutes later, it's like it never even happened. That let me know in that moment there will probably be many more times where these waves of wanting
Right.
to call somebody through and going back to the same programs are going to come. But now I see how simple a process it is. It's just about remembering I have tools and remembering this is what's going to save me over and over and over for myself and allow me to remember who the F I am.
That's it. Remember who you are. All right.
Get the book. This woman has
Yes.
put out so much free information over the years. I've watched her take calls from y'all even before she was charging people for counseling. I've watched her take hours at a time pouring into DMs of people she don't even know. She's giving her soul for free. So this is a beautiful way that you can help repair your own soul by respecting reciprocity. Pay that
Mm.
$33, get your book, and it's going to continue to pay dividends because it's only so much she can put up in a 90-second
Man.
reel and
Yeah.
an hour live. Now you got the full gamut, step by step, of how healing
Yeah.
actually happens.
And I didn't cut any corners, you know,
Nah,
even the expert that was formatting the book, he said, your book is too big.
right,
He said it's too big, it's too many pages. You need to cut it down into 2 books,
right.
which meant that y'all would have had to pay double the amount of money, and I wanted all of what I had to go into my first book. So this is everything. I'm putting everything. I put everything into it. So I appreciate everyone who has already purchased it, everyone who is going to purchase it, and everybody who's even thinking about purchasing it, but also just being present with us, reciprocating the energy of listening, sharing. You know, reciprocation is very big in spiritual integrity. You never want to receive something without also giving back, just
And
like you were speaking about earlier.
and thank you for allowing me to ride with you in this process. Thank you for respecting the effort it took for me to stay out of your way. As much as I wanted my wife in the bed in the morning so we could do our I do whatever that may be that particular morning, knowing that your soul's journey is beyond my comfort in this relationship, being able to have you by my side. So thank you for just not brushing past that, but like really taking your words, your actions, your efforts to acknowledge my ability to be able to do that. And Marty put the mic in your left hand. Marty came up. Marty came up with a new handshake. So it's like this: bang, bang, and then the.
I
So
love
I'm proud of
it.
you. You did that. I look forward to reading the book myself. I heard I got a chapter in there about me.
Yeah.
I want to like really be in my square when I sit with that. So I'm gonna be reading the book just like y'all.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
thank you too, because I didn't expect to go in a portal like I
Right.
did. I didn't expect for this book to consume so much of my life and my
Right.
time the way that it did. So it did take away from me being your wife. It
Mm-hmm.
did take away from me being able to be me to
Yeah.
me.
It
Even
wasn't time for you to be my wife for a
yeah,
month.
yeah,
It
and
wasn't time for her to be my wife. Think about that.
yeah, for real. Even when I was like, babe, I think I'm gonna go away for 2 weeks. To
Initially, it was a few days.
yeah, initially it was a few days, and then I got there. I was like, I think I need more time. I
Yeah.
need more time. And he honored every bit of whatever I need. Even other people were like, you okay with that?
Right. My
And
mom, like,
yeah,
y'all okay?
yeah, and you know, anytime we take some silence or time to ourselves, they think that it's something wrong, but it's just the natural support we have of one another, and it doesn't mean anything is wrong.
Right.
And you really acknowledge that this was a portal I was being drawn into, and you were extremely supportive the entire time, even when moments I didn't even show up for myself, let alone for you or for the house, where I didn't even have the wherewithal, the thought process.
Right.
I was just stuck in
Right.
a tunnel. You
Right.
still were able to bring me back to myself with so much love. So I do appreciate that, baby, and that support. That is the epitome of what provision looks like. And, you know, it's sad to me when I hear a lot of women that are like, he got to have 6 figures and he got to do this and he got to do that and he has to make this, but they never feel supported. They never feel loved. They don't even
Right.
know what it feels like to
Right.
have a man hold space for them, for a man, for you to feel safe with that man. And we're not talking about infidelity this
Right.
podcast. We'll speak about it the next one. But to be with a man and never even have the thought process of him cheating.
Right.
that type of safety and provision that you provide for me gives me the ability to be like, okay, babe, I'm about to go run an Airbnb for 2 weeks to
Right.
write my book.
Right.
And you think nothing of it. So I appreciate you for just holding that type of space for me and supporting me and providing for me in these ways.
That's why daddy here.
I know that's right.
And one last thing too, being able to honor these moments, these phases. Now you get the best of both worlds. Now you have wife and husband when it's time to have that. But when you do have those separations, when you come back, you still have access to that sneaky link energy. So when you do get back,
Man.
I'm gonna just leave it at
And
that.
that sneaky
Yeah.
link energy ain't nothing to play with, okay? Next time you
Gotta do
going
it. You
on
gotta do
another
it. You gotta
2 week
do
vacation.
it.
All right, y'all. We'll see y'all on the next episode, babe. You got anything else to promote?
We running out of space. We running out of time, but we still have a few slots open for the retreat, June 29th to the 3rd, July 6th to the 10th. Hit us up if you're interested. I'll be getting back to meditations on my YouTube page and live meditations every Sunday shortly. But we got some other stuff going on. And then also I'm still working on my book as well. So that's probably end of the year.
What about your music? What about
Oh yeah,
Doc
my bad.
Stigler?
I gotta respect the homie. So as some of y'all may have seen, I got new music out, a collaborative project called Bar Mitzvah with my brothers. Three of the illest. I ain't even
I
think.
know that's right.
Three of the illest MCs to have ever graced a microphone, pen and pad. My brother Tom Gist, formerly of Dipset. My brother Vertical Jones, phenomenal producer, singer, MC, and then my brother R.A.P. Real as Promise, rap phenomenal. We got a dope project coming. We just released our first single called "The Illest," which is an homage to black men, black people, but really black men being the illest for all that we got to push through and survive, but also for anybody that has to push through anything to get to the pinnacle of what it is you do. This song, this record, this video is for you. So yeah, just check it out. It's out on all platforms. The video is out. Bump it, share it, like it, comment. And yeah, Doc Stigler, the musician, the artist, is back as well right now.
I know that's right.
Yeah.
All right. So thank y'all for being present for another episode. We will see y'all on the next one.
Peace.